Good morning, everyone. It is Monday. Time for our discipleship review. What we talked about, giving you just a little bit of what we talked about Saturday. Um, our lesson or our discussion came from Ezekiel chapter 43, verses 1 through 12. We talked about um, the the return of the people. God gives Ezekiel this vision of a temple, a new temple of where the people would worship at and how they would worship in this return and in this new temple, and really a return to Him. And so, um, lots of good discussion about that. And so, we just want to share a couple of ideas with you. Um, and then kind of set you up for our review, our big review, our collective review of this 8 weeks that we've kind of gone through the book of Ezekiel. So, you want to start us off, Rich?
Yeah. Um, so one of the things we kind of talked about within this lesson was how God set up this new temple, and he was really specific, really precise about making sure that Ezekiel and Israel knew that this temple was solely for him. They had a temple before, but they started to mix in their own things and their own idols, um, their own little idols. And like, although they had specific directions from God the first time about how to set up the temple, like they still kind of did their own thing. And, and I was just, as I'm thinking about it now, it's God still gives them, another chance to kind of do it again. But once again, he repeats himself, and he's making sure that he's clear as far as how the temple is supposed to be set up, what's supposed to be in there, and everything is solely about God. Like, this is his temple, this is where he will dwell, and he's the one, the only thing that should be worshipped that's in this temple. And he's making sure to let Israel, let Ezekiel know how the temple is supposed to set up, who's supposed to be worshipped in the temple. uh you don't need to add anything outside of what I'm telling you to add. Like, don't bring in your own idols, your own theology. Like, I don't need none of that. uh the only thing I need you to do is follow my instructions that I'm telling you of what goes into the temple. And so I just, when you think about that, like Israel mixing, maybe from the nations around them, like, oh, they have this in the temple. Well, we can add that in our temple. And
Yeah.
it got to the point where they were doing so much evil in the temple that, like, God just left. He's like, I can't dwell here. I can't be here. This does What you're doing here has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And so God had to leave. But as he comes back, he's making sure that they know exactly, what goes on in this temple, exactly what to add, and just kind of letting them know, like, this is my temple, this is my house. I don't need you to bring anything else into my house than what I'm telling you to bring. And so that was one of the points that we discussed that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great point. I, I think I was looking at maybe like the other side of that coin because it's the
Mhm.
same coin, like
Yeah.
there's God's perspective. And just a quick side note, I mean, as we study God's word, there typically is this other side of the coin dynamic that you can look at, because in God's book and in the Bible, he's usually giving us his perspective. He's telling us, this is what I want you to do. This is the way I want you to go.
Hmm.
And then the other side of that is we see what the people actually do. Like, we see how they actually respond.
Yeah.
And again, before we're quick to criticize them, it's the same for us. God is telling
Right.
us, this is what I want you to do. And then what do we do? right?
Yeah.
And so just in terms of the discussion we were having this week, it really became looking at, okay, says God has promised that the exile is only going to last for so long.
Mhm.
There's a deadline. It's 70 years. It's not forever. You're not tossed away. I'm not done with you. In
Yeah.
70 years there will be a return. What will you look like? What will you be like? How are you preparing to return?
Yeah.
What are you going to do different? Like, you have another chance, not a second chance, not a third chance. We're not, we're not even using numbers. It's just another chance. What are you going to do with this new chance? And I mean, for Israel, again, it was a very specific number.
Mhm.
How do you even, maybe you're not, if it's year 25 and there's 45 more years to go, you may not see, you may not be going back, but does that mean you go, well, I don't have to change. I'm not going to do anything different. I don't have
Right.
to, what, even before you get back, what do you do? How do you return? I guess
Yeah.
is the way you would put it. How do you return even before you physically show back up in that place? I'll
Yeah.
give you, I'm thinking about it right now. Just a quick example in the story of the prodigal son, before he gets back home, he's already had a change in his heart and in his mind of,
Mhm.
what? I was wrong. I was wrong. I don't have to wait until I see my dad and go, maybe I didn't do that. Like, I know right here, right now where I'm at, I was
Yeah.
wrong. And if I go back, when I go back, I need to go back different than the way I left.
Yeah.
And so just, like that's part of the conversation is the flip side. God is letting us know his expectations, like you said, being very explicit, very clear. I don't want any foolishness in my house. Don't come to my house with that foolishness again.
Yeah.
But does that message reach our ears and reach our heart and we go, he's right. He's right. I was messing up before, you know.
Yeah.
Or are we just like, I don't know what he was even so upset about. I mean, we were just worshiping some other gods. Like, it's not like we weren't worshiping him. We were just worshiping other gods too. Like,
Right.
it's the big idea. No. Yeah, that was part of the conversation, part of a much bigger conversation. There's so much, even though we spent 8 weeks in Ezekiel, there's so much we could really talk about because
Yeah.
it's so heavy. God is really speaking to Israel about their past, but not just about their past, but about their future too, which is just that's something only God can do, you
Right.
know. Um, just to prepare us for next week's discussion, which we really hope you will join us for, if at all possible, um, we had one two-part question for you that we hope you would tackle and come prepared to discuss. You can see it there on the screen. I'll read it just so you have it. Um, After studying Ezekiel for these 8 weeks, in your own words, what would you say the book of Ezekiel is? And then the second part is, how is Ezekiel relevant today? How is the book of Ezekiel relevant today? Um, just want you to kind of tackle that question in your own words. Don't Google it. Don't ask Siri. In your own words, what would you say the book is about, and why is it relevant today?
Yeah. I kind of look at that as a kind of like if you had to elevator pitch it. You meet
Mm,
somebody on the elevator and they ask you, "Hey, what is Ezekiel about?" How would you tell them within that time frame?
right.
Um, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you write an essay, that's cool, because that means you're really thinking about it. But even after you write the essay, if you had to boil it down, Like Richard
Yeah.
said, just kind of shorten it, try and break it down to its basic elements. What would you say it's about? How do you understand it? So, yeah, that's next week. We're going to have just a review of all the different lessons, really trying to just talk about what do we take away from this study, because it's great to read it, but if we don't take anything away that we're actually going to use, what's it
Mhm.
worth?
Yeah.
So, anything else, Rich?
That's pretty much it.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you this weekend. We look forward to each week's discussion. The information every Saturday, 9:30. The meeting ID is there at the bottom. Hope you will join us. That's it. Have a great rest of your Monday.